Hey everybody, Kent Wilson from Between the Weekends, where faith meets everyday life. You know, as a person was coming into church the other day, he said, you know, something's been bothering me a little bit. I was wondering if you could help. And he said, you know, those bombings in Boston, why do things like that happen? And why does God allow things like that to happen? It's really kind of bothering me. I was wondering if you could help. You know, there aren't any real easy answers to questions like that, are there? We look around our world and we realize that we live just in a world that's got a whole pile of stuff that's not very pleasant. I'm sitting out here on the farm in probably one of the oddest settings that you'll find. I'm sitting on a chair, literally on a pile of manure, pile of horse manure that some time ago we got out of the barn and piled out here for the time being. We live in a world that's kind of full of that, you know what I mean? And there aren't any real easy answers. And those of us in the faith oftentimes have as many questions as those beyond the faith, wondering how this all makes sense. What is this all about? Those basic why God questions. I don't pretend to have all of the answers now, and I didn't pretend to have the answers then, but I did try to share this. In our tradition, in our understanding of this world and God's role within it, we understand that we have a God who really identifies with human suffering. Way back when God's people were in slavery in Egypt, in those early chapters of Exodus, chapter 3 in particular, we have a God who at that time encountered Moses, and he said, you know, I have observed the misery of my people who are in Egypt. I have heard their cry on account of their taskmasters, and God goes on to say, indeed, I know their sufferings. And then God mentions that God plans to deliver them, and in fact used Moses and Sister Miriam and Brother Aaron along that process. And so we have a God who does identify with this suffering. And when we fast forward throughout history, we eventually come across God's breaking into our world through his only Son, Jesus. And you know, Jesus was born in a very symbolic and literal way. He was born in a stable. He probably wasn't far away from, if not on top of, in his manger, a pile like I'm sitting on right now. Not afraid to be in the part of life that isn't particularly pleasant, doesn't smell very good, is not something that we normally look forward to, is considered waste, the stuff that should be thrown away. And yet, ironically, the way God works, the stuff that seems like it is of little value ends up being the foundation for new growth and offers the nourishment that is needed for new life. And so we have a God in Jesus who does identify with people with plights everywhere in our world, invites those of us who are able to answer the call to help out and alleviate pain in the name of Christ wherever we might be able to do so. But it is never a perfect world in the one in which we live, because we're kind of living between the times, so to speak. We are living between the times of the promise and the time of the ultimate fulfillment. And in the middle of all of that, there aren't always easy answers, but by the grace of God, there are caring people. Folks who, like God, in God's image, can identify with human suffering, can endeavor to try to alleviate pain wherever possible. In the name of Christ, can say, we are here for you, and we are praying for you, and we will do what we can to help you, because we trust that there will be times when we need help as well, and people to identify with us and care for us and help us through our own difficult times. This is a time when we in our particular part of God's world in America kind of draw close, and we're reminded with all the might that we have, we too are still vulnerable people. that part will never change. There's no place that we're ever completely safe, except, of course, in the recognition that God, who created us to begin with, when the time comes that we need our life back again, is able to give it. Because our God, well, He knew how to identify with human suffering and identified with human pain and took upon Himself all the evil that the world could hurl, and eventually He tasted what we will taste, death itself. But He also showed that this stuff that is waste, when it seems like it's all over and it's just time to throw it all away, well, even in the midst of that, He could come to life yet again. The same, we trust, by the grace of God, is true for us, by His power, His love, His mercy, because He identifies with His suffering people of every tribe and race. Thanks for tuning in to this edition of Between the Weekends. I never know what my setting's going to be. This is one of the odder ones, but I think it's true. We have to be willing to embrace that which is not so wonderful in life, to also be able to appreciate that which is really tried and true. So thanks again for tuning in. If you'd like to be a part of other kinds of messages, we have an 800 service, or an 877 number at church. That's a toll-free recorded message. Right now working on a series on the Ten Commandments. An introduction is available right now. A new message comes up every Monday. That number, if you'd like to call it, and they're a little bit longer messages. They're actually meant to be teaching messages. The one that's up right now is around 15 minutes, believe it or not, so call when you have a little bit of time. But that number is 877-470-1910. So that's 877-470-1910. So check it out if you so please. Thanks again for tuning in to Between the Weekends. Pray that this might be a good time between the weekends for you.